Human drags alien girl out of a war-torn citadel, but human sees troops retreat from her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The obsidian citadel groaned like a wounded animal as smoke curled through shattered hallways, each breath of the building sounding too close to collapse. Logan Carter pressed a hand to the scorched wall to steady himself, his helmet HUD flickering with static as it tried to adjust to the ash in the air. The temperature warning blinked red again. Overheating systems, thinning oxygen, hull integrity questionable at best. He wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his glove, the smell of burnt wiring and dust filling his lungs. His boots scraped across loose stone as he moved carefully, mindful of every creak above him. Somewhere deeper inside, an emergency light pulsed in a slow, exhausted rhythm. Logan muttered under his breath, a habit picked up from too many missions that ended like this, and forced his legs to keep going. He'd planned to be airborne 15 minutes ago. He'd planned to be with the rest of his squad. But plans didn't survive places like this, not when half the structure had already given up and the other half was trying to. At the end of the corridor, a section of ceiling sagged, dust drifting down each time the ground trembled. Logan ducked under a leaning beam, his shoulder brushing it gently, as if any sudden movement might bring the whole citadel down. His wrist display flickered. No incoming signals, no friendly pings, nothing but static. Great, he whispered. Last guy in the building. He should have been focused on escape, but something, maybe instinct, maybe plain stubbornness, kept pushing him deeper. A faint sound reached him through the distant rumble. Not machinery, not shifting stone. Softer. A breath. Logan paused, held his own breath. Listened again. There. A strained inhale, thin and shaky, coming from a chamber ahead. He followed the noise slowly, carefully, stepping over broken tiles and fallen banners until he reached a collapsed doorway. Light leaked through the cracks, refracted by drifting dust like drifting snowflakes in a storm. Through the gap, he saw movement, a faint stir, almost imperceptible. Logan eased himself sideways between broken columns, boots nudging aside debris until the room opened in front of him. What remained of it looked like a ceremonial hall, or something close to it. And in the center, partially pinned by a fallen support beam, lay someone he hadn't expected to find. Her skin carried a soft silver-blue glow beneath the soot, her hair tangled with ash, her breathing shallow but steady. She was conscious, her violet eyes tracking him the moment he stepped fully into the room. Not afraid, not pleading, just watching. Logan blinked, taken aback by the steadiness in her gaze. She didn't speak. Neither did he, for a moment. Then he knelt slowly, testing the beam with his hands, careful not to shift its weight too suddenly. His palms warmed against the metal. His HUD warned him again, structural instability above. The whole place wanted to come down. You're alive, he said softly, half to himself. The alien girl's response was a faint exhale that might have been agreement or defiance. Logan didn't know which. He just knew one thing. Leaving her wasn't an option anymore. And the Citadel wasn't going to wait. Logan steadied his breath as the ceiling above gave another tired groan, sending a thin shower of dust drifting across the fallen chamber. The girl's violet eyes stayed fixed on him, unblinking, sharp despite the exhaustion lining her face. Her silver-blue skin caught the dim emergency glow like frost-catching moonlight, giving her an otherworldly stillness that made the ruined hall feel strangely quiet. He pressed a palm gently against the beam trapping her, testing its balance the way he would test a loose ladder rung or a rusted hatch. The metal felt warm from the lingering heat of the collapse. I am going to lift this, he said, keeping his voice steady, the kind used when calming frightened evacuees. If anything feels wrong, say something. Her brow tightened slightly, not quite a nod, but close. The floor trembled beneath them as he shifted his weight. The beam shifted with a soft scrape. Logan stopped instantly, holding perfectly still until the vibration faded. He could feel her eyes on him, assessing every move, as if trying to understand why a stranger from another world was kneeling in the dust to help her. When the rumble passed, he repositioned his stance and pushed again, slower this time, careful not to jolt anything loose. The beam rose an inch, then another. He did not let himself think about the strain creeping into his muscles or the time slipping away. Inch by inch, he raised the weight enough for her to slide free. She moved with controlled precision despite the discomfort etched into her expression, pulling herself clear just as the beam settled back onto the cracked floor. Logan exhaled, relieved. "Can you stand?" She tried, bracing her hand against the broken tiles. Her legs trembled beneath her weight, and she managed only a moment upright before her balance faltered. Logan reached out, not grabbing but offering support, creating space for her to choose. She hesitated, then placed her hand lightly against his arm. Her touch was cool, steady, surprising in its trust. The building groaned again, louder this time, a reminder that the Citadel was losing its last battle with gravity. Logan tightened his grip just enough to guide her without rushing her pace. They stepped over fractured stone and fallen banners, the hallway narrowing as they moved. The emergency lights flickered, each pulse marking the rhythm of the Citadel's fading strength. "You should not be here," she murmured finally, her voice quiet but strong enough to carry over the distant rumble. "Your people were ordered to evacuate this sector hours ago." Logan managed a faint smile. "I did not get the memo." Her eyes narrowed, not in irritation but puzzlement. "Humans do not stay in collapsing structures for strangers." "Maybe we do on the good days," he replied. She looked ahead again, processing that. They reached a damaged service corridor where the ceiling dipped low, the air cooler and clearer. A faint draft brushed past them, carrying the promise of an exit. Logan guided her through the narrow passage, his steps careful, every sound amplified by the tight space. The girl's breathing steadied, though he could tell she was still fighting dizziness. Her hand remained on his arm, more for awareness than reliance. "You know my name," Logan said softly. "What should I call you?" She hesitated, then answered, "Saris." He repeated it once, letting the sound settle. "Saris, we are getting out of here." The corridor ahead opened into a wider maintenance area, faint daylight spilling through a fractured section of the outer wall. Saris paused, her gaze flicking toward the distant light as if measuring how far they still had to go. Logan noticed the way her shoulders straightened, the way determination replaced fatigue in her posture. Even injured, she carried herself like someone who had never allowed weakness to define her. Logan adjusted his stance to give her better balance, and together they moved toward the distant glow. The Citadel trembled behind them, but for the first time since entering, he felt a sliver of confidence. They were still inside the ruins, still far from safety, but Saris was alive, and that was reason enough to keep going. The maintenance tunnel widened just enough for Logan and Saris to move side by side, their footsteps soft against the dust-coated floor. Faint daylight filtered through an uneven crack ahead, the cool air brushing against Logan's face like a reminder that open sky still existed somewhere beyond the ruins. Saris walked carefully, her hand resting lightly on his forearm, steady but not dependent. Each step carried a quiet determination, as if she refused to let the Citadel see her falter. Logan kept his pace slow, matching her rhythm. The air shifted again, pushing the lingering smoke back toward the deeper corridors. He took that as a good sign. Fresh air meant an exit was close. "How much farther?" Saris asked, her voice calm, though he could hear the strain beneath it. "Maybe 50 yards, Logan said, watching the strip of light ahead grow brighter. "Once we get through that breach, we can reassess." She absorbed that silently. Another tremor rolled through the floor, a long, low vibration that made dust trickle from the ceiling. Logan instinctively angled his body closer to her, shielding her from anything that might fall. Saris noticed, her violet eyes flicking toward him with a curious softness before she looked away again. "Logan," she said after a moment, her tone more formal, "you should not be risking this much for someone you do not know." "You are not a risk," he replied simply. "You are a person in trouble. That is enough." She looked at him again, longer this time, as if weighing the sincerity behind his words. The tremors faded, replaced by a stillness that felt almost too quiet. Logan scanned the passage ahead. The broken wall opened into what looked like an old courtyard, its stone columns cracked, but still standing. Sunlight streamed in through the breach, catching the floating dust and turning it into soft sparks. It would have been peaceful if not for the distant echoes of engines somewhere beyond the Citadel. They stepped into the courtyard carefully. The open space gave Logan a better view of the sky, streaked with pale clouds and the faint shimmer of heat rising from the distant plains. The Citadel's outer wall, once towering and polished, now sloped inward in a jagged arc where part of it had collapsed. Saris paused at the threshold, steadying herself with a controlled breath. She touched the rough stone of the broken wall, her fingers tracing the scorch marks along its surface. This place was not meant to fall, she murmured. Logan watched her expression shift, not sorrow exactly, but something quiet and heavy. Places fall, he said softly. People rebuild. It is what we do. She considered that. Her gaze drifted across the courtyard to a narrow path, partially blocked by debris. Logan pointed toward it. We can move through there? It leads down the slope toward the outer service road. Saris nodded, gathering her focus. Logan guided her over the uneven stone, helping her navigate where the ground dipped or shifted. Her balance improved with each careful step. The sunlight gave her skin a cool glow, highlighting faint markings along her temples that Logan had not noticed before. They looked almost like natural patterns, the kind shaped by heritage rather than injury. She noticed him noticing and offered a small, guarded explanation. These markings show lineage. They brighten under stress. Good to know, he replied gently, filing the detail away. They reached the edge of the courtyard where the path slanted downward. Logan tested the first few stones with his boot, judging their stability. We can take it slow, he said. No need to rush. Saris nodded again, though her eyes had shifted upward toward the sky as if searching for something he could not see. Logan followed her gaze, but all he saw were distant clouds drifting across the horizon. She lowered her eyes, steadying herself. Let us keep moving, she said. Logan offered his arm. She accepted without hesitation this time. Together, they stepped onto the sloping path, the broken citadel looming behind them as they made their way into the open light. The sloping path carried Logan and Saris down the side of the ruined citadel, each careful step sending small stones sliding into the dry wind below. The sunlight grew warmer as they descended, brushing their faces with a quiet steadiness that contrasted sharply with the trembling structure behind them. Logan kept one hand near Saris in case the ground shifted again. She matched his steps with controlled precision, though he noticed the slight tightness in her jaw each time her weight shifted onto her weaker side. The air smelled different out here, less of dust and scorched metal and more of mineral earth warmed by the afternoon sun. A faint breeze lifted strands of Saris's pale hair, carrying them across her cheek in gentle arcs. She seemed to notice the scent as well, pausing a moment to breathe it in, her shoulders easing just slightly. You are sure your route is safe? She asked. Her tone was steady, but Logan could hear the cautious edge beneath it. Safe is a strong word, he said honestly, but it is the best path we have. She accepted that with a quiet nod, and they continued downward. The path narrowed as they approached a series of weathered stone arches that had once marked an auxiliary entrance. Now the arches leaned at fragile angles, their shadows stretching across the walkway in long, soft lines. Logan ducked beneath the lowest one, offering his hand to help Saris under the uneven beam overhead. She took it without hesitation, her grip light but confident. Once beneath the arch, she paused. Her eyes lifted toward the citadel's distant upper towers, what remained of them still jutting like broken teeth against the sky. I trained in those halls, she said softly. I memorized battle patterns in rooms that no longer exist. Her words were not mournful, just factual, like a historian reciting a well-known timeline. Logan glanced at her, watching the way the sunlight caught the markings along her temples. You were born here? He asked. Born, raised, and shaped here, she replied. This citadel was more than stone. It was identity. Logan took a breath, letting the weight of that settle. Places matter, he said, but people matter more. Saris's eyes shifted toward him, studying his face with an expression he could not quite read. Something softened there, just for a heartbeat, before she looked away again. They moved forward, reaching the end of the sloping path where the ground leveled into a narrow ledge overlooking the outer service road far below. The drop was steep, but the ledge itself was stable. Logan checked the surrounding terrain, noting the ridgeline beyond and the partial cover offered by scattered boulders. "We will take the switchback road down," he said. "It adds distance, but it avoids the loose shale along the cliff." Saris's gaze followed the long curve of the descending road. "Then, that is the path we will take." Logan adjusted his stance to help her navigate onto the ledge. Her balance was improving, her steps surer now. The sunlight reflected off her skin in a cool shimmer, highlighting the quiet resilience in her posture. They began moving along the ledge, the Citadel now a distant silhouette behind them. The wind grew steadier, carrying faint sounds from the open plains below. Saris's chin lifted slightly, as if she was listening to something Logan could not hear. "What is it?" he asked. She hesitated, her eyes narrowing toward the horizon. "Movement," she said slowly. "It may be only the wind." Logan listened too, hearing nothing distinct. He scanned the plains but saw only shifting light and distant heat waves. Whatever she sensed, he could tell it was subtle, woven into the land in ways unfamiliar to him. "We keep going," he said. "We are close." Saris nodded once, centering herself. She stepped forward with renewed focus, her hand brushing lightly against his arm for balance. Together they followed the ledge, leaving the broken Citadel farther behind with every careful step, the open world waiting ahead in quiet uncertainty. The ledge narrowed as Logan and Saris continued downward, the switchback road now close enough that he could see the first bend curving around a cluster of sun-warmed stone. The afternoon light softened the harsh angles of the landscape, turning the rocky terrain into muted golds and silvers. Saris moved with more confidence now, though Logan remained alert to every shift in her balance. The quiet between them felt different than before, not tense, just full of things neither of them had found the right moment to say. They reached the bottom of the ledge, stepping onto the compacted dirt of the service road. The surface was uneven but solid, and the sense of open space around them brought a subtle relief. Logan exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the Citadel's shadows finally loosening. Saris paused beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon once more. The wind brushed her hair across her cheek, and she brushed it back with a small, controlled motion. "You still sense movement?" Logan asked. She considered the question before answering. "Yes," she said softly, "but it is distant. Faint. It may be nothing." Her voice carried no alarm, only awareness. Logan had learned enough in the past hour to trust her instincts. "We will keep steady," he said. "No rushing." They began walking along the road, the slope gentle enough that Saris no longer needed constant support. Her posture straightened as the path widened, her steps quiet but intentional. Logan stayed close in case the ground shifted, but each minute made it clearer that she was regaining strength. The road curved around a broad outcropping of rock, revealing a sheltered hollow tucked beneath an overhanging ridge. It held scattered pieces of old equipment, half buried in sand and untouched by whatever had torn the Citadel apart. Logan guided Saris toward it. "We can rest a moment," he said. Saris hesitated as if weighing the need against her pride, then nodded. They moved into the shade where the air felt cooler, the smell of sun-warmed stone fading into a crisp mineral scent. Logan helped her sit on a smooth rock ledge, then crouched nearby, scanning the distant plains again. The horizon shimmered with heat, but nothing moved. Saris watched him quietly. After a moment she said, "You stay aware even when you think no one is watching." Logan glanced at her. "Old habit." "A good one," she replied. Her tone carried no judgment, only observation. Logan took a slow breath. "You mentioned your markings respond to stress," he said gently. "Do they still feel bright?" Saris looked down at the faint patterns along her temples, their glow now softened to a quiet shimmer. "Less than before," she said. "Your presence has been steadying." Logan blinked, unsure how to respond to that. There was no embarrassment in her voice, just honesty. He nodded once, letting the words settle without pressing them. A soft gust moved through the hollow, scattering fine sand across the ground. Saris lifted her gaze, studying the muted colors of the sky. "My people believe that calm is a form of strength," she said. "You carry it naturally." Logan gave a small, almost self-conscious shrug. "Most days I feel like I am just trying to figure things out as I go." "Then you figure things out well," she said. The wind shifted again, brushing across the ridge with a faint hum. Saris tilted her head slightly, listening. The movement I sensed earlier, she said quietly. It is closer now. Logan rose to his feet, his expression steady but focused. How close? Saris stood slowly, her balance firmer than before. She looked toward the far end of the road where the sunlight pooled in bright haze. Close enough that we should be ready to move, she said. Logan offered his arm. She accepted it with the same quiet confidence as before. Together they stepped out of the hollow and back into the sunlight, the open world waiting with its quiet, uncertain promise. The sunlight settled gently across the road as Logan and Saris moved forward, the warmth soaking into the stone beneath their feet. The breeze carried a soft hum, like distant air shifting over metal, but the sound remained faint enough that Logan could not trace its origin. Saris listened with more intention than before, as if each change in the wind spoke a language only she understood. Her posture remained steady, her steps stronger now that the terrain had leveled out. Logan stayed close, ready to adjust his pace to hers, though she seemed determined not to slow him down. The switchback road curved ahead in a wide arc, opening into a stretch where the landscape fell away into rolling plains. The far horizon glimmered under the afternoon light, bright enough that the heat shimmer blurred the line between sky and earth. Logan paused at the curve, scanning the open space. Nothing moved across the plains, not a shadow or a flicker. Still hearing something? He asked quietly. Saris tilted her head again, her eyes narrowing slightly. The sound is layered, she said. It is not constant. It comes and goes, as if carried across long distances. Logan considered that. Wind can play tricks like that. Yes, she said softly. But this feels different. They continued along the road, the air growing cooler as a thin cloud drifted across the sun. Saris adjusted her balance when the breeze strengthened, her hand brushing lightly against Logan's arm for a moment before she let it fall again. He glanced at her, noticing the small shift in her breathing, the way she gathered herself with each inhale as if anchoring her focus. She was recovering, but her strength was still rebuilding itself. If we find a safe point ahead, we can rest again, Logan said. We will not overexert, she replied. I am steady. Her tone held no pride, only assurance. As they rounded another curve, the terrain opened into a vantage point where the plains stretched for miles. Logan slowed instinctively. From this angle, the horizon looked clearer. The shimmer of heat softened enough to reveal distant shapes. Not defined, not close, but present. Saris stopped beside him almost at the same moment, her eyes fixing on the faint silhouettes. They stood still together, listening. The sound reached them again, carried on the wind. A soft vibration rather than a noise, like the distant hum of vehicles or machinery operating in low cycles. Logan felt it in his chest more than he heard it. Saris watched the horizon with a focus that bordered on instinct. Those are not winds, she said quietly. Those are engines. Logan drew a slow breath, letting the information settle. Your people? Possibly, she said, though uncertainty touched her voice. The cadence is familiar, but faint. Logan scanned the slope below the road. The terrain offered enough dips and ridges to keep them sheltered if needed. He looked back at her. We do not know their intent. We will stay cautious. Saris nodded. Agreed. They continued, moving with deliberate calm even as the faint engine hum pulsed again through the wind, each wave slightly stronger than the last. Logan noticed the markings along Saris's temples brighten just a fraction, as if responding to something he could not sense. Her steps remained steady, but her expression shifted into a thoughtful stillness. He spoke softly, careful not to disturb her focus. You hear more than I do. It is not only hearing, she replied. It is memory, recognition of patterns. Logan nodded once, accepting that. They reached a shallow dip in the road where the stone curved into a natural alcove created by erosion. It offered shade and a wide view of the plains without exposing them. Logan guided Saris into the shade, and she sat carefully on a smooth section of stone. The wind shifted again, carrying another faint pulse of engine sound. This time it was clearer, like a distant line of approaching movement. Saris looked toward the horizon, her eyes steady. They are coming closer, she said. Logan sat beside her, grounding himself in the calm that hung between them. Whatever approached was still far away. There was time. Time to breathe. Time to understand. And time, for the first moment since the Citadel, to prepare without fear overriding reason. The steady pulse of distant engines deepened as Logan and Saris remained in the quiet shade of the alcove, the sound growing clearer with every shift of the wind. The rhythm was no longer a faint whisper but a defined cadence, steady and organized, the kind that belonged to a structured force rather than scattered travelers. Saris lifted her chin slightly, eyes narrowing as if she could read entire intentions from the distant hum. Logan watched her expression, the subtle adjustments in her breathing, the slight brightening of the markings along her temples. None of it looked like fear. It looked like recognition. "You know that formation?" he said softly. Saris took a slow breath before answering. "It resembles the forward units of my people. Their engines are calibrated to specific patterns so they can communicate positioning even across long distances." Logan considered that. "So they are not a threat to you?" She hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the shimmering horizon. "Not directly." Logan caught the nuance. "Meaning, if they are searching for survivors, finding me may not be their primary goal," she said. "Their orders may still center on securing territory, not on retrieving individuals." Logan took that in carefully. She had been left behind in the Citadel, trapped without assistance or protection. If her people were moving this way now, their purpose might not include her at all. "Could they still help you?" he asked gently. Saris clasped her hands lightly in her lap, her posture steady but thoughtful. "They might. Or they might see my presence as unexpected and require confirmation of identity before offering aid." Logan nodded. That did not sound hostile, just procedural. Still, he could sense something else behind her words, something quieter. "You think they may not have expected you to survive," he said. It was not a question. Saris looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting a depth that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. "The Citadel was compromised faster than predicted," she said. "If they believed I had fallen with it, they may have shifted priorities." Logan rested his forearms on his knees, absorbing the weight of that truth. He did not push further. He simply let the silence stretch, giving her space to breathe. The engine hum drew a little closer, carried on a cooler breeze that swept across the alcove and rustled the sand at their feet. Saris glanced toward the ridge line above them, her posture straightening with renewed clarity. "They will reach the lower plains soon," she said. "From there, they will have direct line of sight to this road. Then we will stay visible," Logan said calmly. "Make sure they know we are not hiding." Saris offered a faint, appreciative look. "You are surprisingly comfortable with uncertainty." "Part of the job," he replied. "Also part of walking beside someone who knows this land better than I do." The markings along her temples glowed a shade brighter, a quiet ripple of emotion she did not try to hide. "Your steadiness has been grounding," she said softly. Another wave of engine hum traveled across the plains, this time with a clearer signature. Saris stood slowly, testing her balance. Logan rose with her, staying close enough to support her if needed, but not close enough to crowd her. She watched the horizon with a lifted chin, her posture tall, composed, and unmistakably regal in its quiet certainty. "They will see us soon," she said. Logan nodded. "Then we stay right here." Saris exhaled, a steadying breath that seemed to settle the air around them. "Whatever comes, we face it together." And as the distant formation drew nearer, the wind carried the last traces of the Citadel's dust away, leaving only open sky and the echo of engines approaching with purpose. The engine hum sharpened into a clearer pattern as the formation approached the plains below, the rhythm steady and deliberate, like a signature only someone who belonged to that world could fully understand. Logan stood beside Saris at the edge of the alcove, the wind brushing across both of them as the sunlight painted long lines across the rocky slope. Saris's posture remained tall, her breath slow and even, the faint patterns along her temples glowing with a quiet intensity that seemed to answer the sound on the wind. Logan watched her for a moment, noting the shift in her focus. Whatever approach was no longer just noise to her. It was a calling, a recognition echoing across distance. The engine hum grew stronger, then softened as the units adjusted their descent along the far side of the plains. Their movement was smooth, controlled, almost ceremonial. "They are clarifying formation," Saris murmured. "This is not a search pattern. It is an approach meant to be seen." Logan steadied his stance. "Seen by us. Seen by whoever is present," she replied. But her voice held a subtle shift, a quiet knowing, as if a deeper truth was threading itself into her awareness. The wind carried another pulse of sound, clearer now, almost musical in the way it resonated through the open air. Saris's eyes softened with recognition. "That signal," she whispered. "It is reserved for those of high command." Logan absorbed that. "Someone important is with them?" Saris nodded once, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Someone who expects to be observed." Logan paced a few steps, scanning the plains from different angles. "Then we stay visible," he said. "We make sure there is no confusion about our intentions." Saris looked at him, her expression holding a hint of quiet gratitude. "You are braver than you admit." "I am just trying to make good decisions," he said, "even when I do not have all the pieces." She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "That is precisely what bravery is." The engine hum shifted again, rising briefly in tone before settling into a deep resonance. A faint shimmer appeared on the horizon, like light bending through heat waves. Logan narrowed his eyes. The shimmer grew, forming faint outlines moving in synchronized motion. They were still far, but their presence filled the landscape with a subtle pressure, like the air itself recognized their authority. Saris stood straighter, her breath deepening, her eyes reflecting the distant shapes. Logan sensed the importance of the moment, but waited silently, letting her lead the interpretation. "They are signaling acknowledgement," she said softly. "To you?" "To my lineage," she answered. The markings along her temples brightened further, their glow subtle but unmistakable. Logan felt the shift in the air before he understood it. The formation on the horizon adjusted, spreading into a ceremonial arc rather than a tactical line. Their engines softened, the hum smoothing into a lower, respectful resonance. Saris took a breath, so steady it seemed to anchor the wind itself. "They know who I am," she said quietly, "even from this distance." Logan looked at her with a calm certainty. "Then they are coming for you." She turned to him, her violet eyes holding something deeper than relief, something that carried both gratitude and an unspoken truth. "You brought me this far," she said. "You carried me from the Citadel when I could not stand. Whatever happens next, that will not be forgotten." Logan shook his head gently. "You survived because you fought to survive. I only walked beside you." But her expression remained soft, almost luminous. The markings along her temples glowed like a quiet constellation, answering the engine hum that rolled steadily toward them. The approaching formation grew clearer with every passing moment, their presence undeniable. Saris lifted her chin, her posture tall and resolute. "They will reach us soon," she said. Logan nodded. "Then we meet them together." And as the formation advanced across the plains, the wind fell into a hushed stillness, as if the world itself paused to witness what came next. The formation crossed the plains in a wide, graceful arc, their engines humming with a resonance that seemed to settle into the ground beneath Logan and Saris as they waited at the edge of the alcove. The shimmer of heat parted around the approaching units, revealing sleek metallic silhouettes moving with disciplined precision. They were not rushing. They were not searching. They were arriving with purpose, their formation widening into a ceremonial curve that framed the lower road like an unfolding banner. Saris stood tall beside Logan, her breath steady, her violet eyes tracking each subtle shift in the distant line. The markings along her temples glowed in a soft, pulsing pattern that seemed to answer the approaching resonance, as if both forces recognized each other through some quiet, ancient language. Logan watched her more than he watched the formation. There was something in her posture he had not seen before, a calm certainty that settled over her like a mantle she had worn long before the Citadel fell. The wind stilled as the first unit reached the base of the road, their movement slowing until they formed a half circle at a respectful distance. Their engines quieted into a low thrum, the sound gentle and deliberate, like a bow drawn without tension. Saris inhaled once, a deep and grounding breath, then stepped forward. Logan remained beside her, matching her pace without needing to speak. The air shifted in response to her presence. A ripple passed through the assembled units, something subtle but unmistakable, as if they were acknowledging a figure of significance. The front ranks adjusted their stance, not in alarm but in recognition. Saris's markings brightened again, casting a faint glow across her cheeks. She did not raise her voice when she spoke. She did not need to. "They recognize me," she said softly to Logan. even after the collapse. Logan nodded, the calm in his own chest mirroring hers. They should. The wind carried her next breath like a fragile thread. Not all believed I would return. Logan did not answer. He simply remained next to her, letting his presence be the reassurance she did not ask for but no longer tried to hide. From the center of the formation, a lone figure stepped forward, wearing ceremonial armor that reflected the sunlight like molten silver. Their movements were measured, respectful, entirely directed toward Saris. When the figure reached a distance that honored her standing, they paused and placed one hand over their chest, lowering their head in a gesture Logan had never seen before. A soft sound rippled through the formation, like a collective exhale. Saris stood still, her expression composed, though emotion flickered briefly in her eyes. "They are acknowledging my return," she murmured. Logan glanced at the bowed figure. "Then go to them," he said gently. "You belong with your people." She turned to him fully then, her expression unguarded and quietly sincere. "I would not be standing here without you." Her voice carried no grand declaration, no dramatic flourish, only truth spoken plainly. She stepped forward, and the formation shifted again, making space for her approach. But before she moved too far from him, she looked back once more. The moment lingered, warm and steady, a silent exchange that needed no explanation. Logan felt the weight of it settle somewhere deep, something he would carry long after the engines faded. Saris lifted her chin and began walking toward the waiting ranks. As she approached, the formation straightened further, their posture aligning in a unified gesture of respect. The bowed figure rose, their eyes reflecting recognition and relief as they greeted her. Logan remained where he was, his boots rooted in the quiet dust of the road, watching the world rearrange itself around her return. And then, in a moment that felt almost unreal, the entire front line of troops gently stepped back, creating a widened path as Saris drew near. Not a retreat out of fear, a retreat out of reverence. Logan watched the movement with a slow, steady breath, understanding more in that instant than any words could have given. The wind carried a soft silence across the plains, a silence that held meaning rather than emptiness. Saris paused halfway down the newly opened path. She turned again, her gaze finding him with unshaken clarity. The distance between them did nothing to dim the connection forged in the ruins. Her eyes softened, carrying a quiet gratitude that felt as enduring as the landscape itself. Logan held that look, understanding without needing to reply. The wind brushed past them both, scattering the dust gently into the light, and for a moment it felt as if the world itself acknowledged the journey they had shared, the choices made, and the quiet truth that sometimes strength was not about standing alone, but about refusing to leave someone behind. The formation waited, the path remained open, and Saris's eyes reflected the sky with a calm that felt almost human.